7 minutes. 7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you. Here I am offering you my precious time, and you waste it by running around.7 minutes.
你最想把哪个男孩带回家？
可爱又害羞的布莱恩，
坏小子雅各布，可爱动漫宅男，也就是我，娘炮暖。
I think about all the time, think you may need all of mine. Hate to say, you know that love is blind. I'm about to see, I close my eyes, they can see you in here though. Most of them need dollar signs to make every day your birthday and every night your Valentine. But we tried that we could be somewhere the climate is warm long as you around me. I swear that everything will be just fine. I wish that we could take some time. Go anywhere, baby, I don't mind. Grown man in my suit and tie. Hey, for sure. It's like, I'm not hey, get this off my chest. I think I know I love you. I swear you're the best. Benzin all day, hey, get off my chest. Oh yeah, I think I love you. Oh baby, maybe if we tried that, we could be somewhere in the climate. It's warm, long as you around me. It's warm. I swear that everything will be just fine. I wish that we could take some time. Go anywhere, baby, I don't mind. Grown man in my suit and tie. Hey, there's a way without you and I.
你最想把哪个男孩带回家？
别整了，妈，我要吐了。好，先提前开始了，没得吵。今天我们也没有什么新活，主要是能说的话，主要是我现在嗓子呀，因为今天不读，嗓子都这样还读个屁。今天干什么好？我没想好，如果他们不来的话，今天可能播到8点就结束。我受不了了，米老头还在复读他那些屁话，他最近真是输上瘾了，他还在输上，我估计他至少得输到中级选举。今天。我想一下有什么活。对，我今天其实有个活可以跟大家讲，但是我不小心把图放了，只会找。今天如果说实在没有活的话，我只好那我只能跟大家讲一下波斯地理。等我先把图找到。波斯的地理，等一下我找一下地图，不知道放哪。等一下各位，我正在找图。哎，我把图放哪？不知道我能把图放哪。哎，这真糟糕。感谢梦九老哥，感谢。对不起各位，稍等一会儿，我正在找那个地图，我不知道我是哪一天那个地图群友给的，我也不知道我放哪，可能是我找错位置了。如果实在不行的话，我们可以讲，就我打算继续讲那个。哎，等下这是这个翻正的地图是讲，好像没什么意思。对，看到这个图。等一下各位，我是原图，感觉等一下各位，我找到一个图了，在那个重新发一遍。今天讲什么？今天没有，我打算把波斯的地理稍微讲。我找到，稍等，这个地图页面不是太详细啊，它只标了这个地图，它似乎不是特别全，它好像只标了省份，还有哪个省的那个首府，它没有说是标一个更细节的东西。但是我觉得对于我们来说，它应该是够了。罗马人为何谁呀？就跟老哥翻译一个什么罗马为何2000年不倒，跟卡尔德利斯教授的翻译。
Talking about a society that was right
我
in
们
the
正好我们可以讲这个，我们其实可以去做这个的切片，但是哎呀，我发现个逆天，经典逆天账号啊，啥东西都没有，野狗啊，经典野狗说呢对于这种引战的人，我等一下我得把这个弱智举报一下。对于这种弱智，我觉得没有什么好说的，直接举报。妈野狗在论战拉黑就没有必要了，我还是要光吼一下，拜拜了你们。去你妈的，刚刚我的评论区引战，你真是写完了啊！等我先回一下消息。新罗马帝国今年初是吗？我在想我要不要换一个，因为我这个账号不太方便发消息。我看一个，算了，我自己先弄好吧，我先不弄这个。感觉你说对，等一下，我先把这个图弄好。我看一下，我应该是把那个图放到什么 We Are 的查理克表。图的呢？好，我们拿到了一个近代的波斯一个地图啊，差不多就这种。然后我们从哪里讲这个问题？阿什哈巴德丢了是吧？哎我操，阿什哈德居然丢掉了。阿什哈德现在是土库曼斯坦的首都吗？应该是吧。对，阿什哈德。从哪开始讲好啊？我们还是从波斯人的老家开始讲，就是那波斯人的老家当然就是法尔斯省。这里的重要城市有这个拉尔和设拉子。那设拉子也是一个非常美丽的一座城，它可以看设拉子，它坐落在这个山脉的南缘，然后南边就是沿海的这个布什尔省及这个霍尔木兹干省。阿巴斯港也就坐落在这个位置。阿巴斯港也是波斯可以说是对外交通的一个重要的省。然后法尔斯省这边有2个小省，一个叫恰哈尔马哈勒巴克蒂里亚里省和科吉鲁耶博耶尔艾哈迈迪省。那么这2个小省在东边就是胡吉斯坦省。这个胡吉斯坦省在以前的话呢，它的名字就也叫做阿拉伯斯坦，因为这里有大家看嘛，这个胡吉斯坦在地理上更靠近两河，所以说这边有大量的阿拉伯人。那么它的首府应该就是在阿瓦什，之前是被炸了，应该从2010年被炸了。然后这边西边的就是一系列的小省，也是波斯 斯的人口比较密集的地方，这个就东北部。你看东北部的省就比较小，因为这里人口也多。伊拉什木省、霍雷斯坦省、科尔曼沙赫省、中央省、哈马丹省、库尔德斯坦省，这也是库尔德人的一个集中地。就应该说这边就库尔德斯坦和这个科尔曼沙赫省都是库尔德人的。然后库尔德人距再往走就是2个阿塞拜疆省，是大不里是东阿塞拜疆省肯定是更重要的。然后应该说阿塞拜疆有3个地方，一个是西阿塞拜疆省、东阿塞拜疆省以及阿尔达比勒省。那么阿尔达比勒也就是萨菲维王朝的诞生。然后你看这边往西北走是土耳其，往北方走是亚美尼亚，然后往东北方向走就是这个阿塞拜疆。其实这里一个河本来是应该是，其实整个阿塞拜疆就亚美尼亚和这个，就是你看到今天亚美尼亚和阿塞拜疆以前都是波斯的一部分，就波斯以前的这个领土是直接到那个高加索山脉的，但是被沙俄割走了。特别是这一块，你看这一块本来如果说你看这一段其实是按照一个河流的划分，如果这个河流入海口的话，其实这边应该划开的，但是当时就那个巴库就坐在那个河的入海口，所以说这块地方也就被割给了，就被沙俄拿走了，现在属于阿塞拜疆。哎呀操，真的。那请说这个国人的，然后这边马什哈德在哪个省？马尔扎河在这边，在拉扎维霍罗詹省，在东北部这里。马什哈德，其实阿沙哈瓦德其实是当时的第一重镇，但是后面土库曼斯坦被沙俄割走之后，就只能到马什哈德。那个谁呀、那个纳迪尔沙就当过马什哈德的副总督嘛，就纳迪尔沙就在这个地方起家的。然后吉兰省、马赞德兰省以及哥勒斯坦省，就是这个里海沿岸这边地方，这个地方是可以种大米。然后就是波斯的几个核心的政治地方，就是加兹温省，首府当然是加兹温的，然后是德黑兰以及库姆省，库姆神学院就在这个地方。你可以看到就是加兹温、德黑兰跟库姆本质上就是在一个地方啊，是挨在一起，这也是波斯的政治核心。然后南边有一片较大的就是伊斯法罕省，就是伊斯法罕的所在。那你可以看到德黑兰作为首都的话，一个方面是它更好的能够怎么说呢，去镇住这个东北方面，这个西北方面说错了，西北方面。如果说在伊斯法罕的话，就能够更好的去控制南边波斯湾这个地方，这也是一种取舍吧。当然，主要是德黑兰缺水真的太严重了啊。当然，定都德黑兰还有一个好处就是这边的粮食产地可以直接把粮食运进去，这也是一个考量。但是德黑兰，你看这边就是有个卡维尔研磨嘛，这个研磨说实话就也是环境挺，然后就是萨姆南省，这个是没有什么存在感，包括这个亚兹德省、科尔曼省倒是，你看这个名字，你看这个科尔曼省，然后这边有个科尔曼沙赫省是两个，一个在东，一个在西，然后再往南边走就是西斯坦和比卢支斯坦省，这个地方就乱七八糟，大家都知道比卢支人就生活在这个地方，到处乱窜，到处搞一些蛋人就行。然后就是南北三呼罗珊省，北呼罗珊省、拉扎维呼罗珊省和比尔詹德呼罗珊省，这边就是呼罗珊山脉嘛，看到这也是以往来说，你可以说是欧亚大陆的，我觉得这个是欧亚大陆的，这也能够算欧亚大陆东西的一个分界吧，我觉得。然后在东边就是阿富汗，其实本来赫拉特也应该是波斯人的，你看如果说把赫拉特拿下来的话，那个这个防线就能也称不上防线吧，这边就只能控制中间这个地带，但是很明显的被割了，那被割了就没办法，那只能这样，那怎么办？谁让波斯人不行的？因为你看到你会发现波斯的地缘真的就它的边界划界情况对它是相当不利的。你看这正东面赫拉特丢了，这北面阿什巴哈德丢了，这边巴库丢了，那等于说基本上就是完全就撤回他这个地方基本上就是说白了，能丢的地方都给他丢了，都恨不得就是这么一个情况。他这个情况还是相当的不容乐观的，他这能丢的省全都给他丢了。然后我们可以看到这个对啊，这就是英国人画的，这个地方就是英国人画的，阿富汗这段就是英国人画的。那你恭喜你猜对了，还真是英国人画的。你们稍微等一下，我要去回别人一个消息，我要去稍等。
哎，马克发生什么了？突然叫我们。
没什么，就是直播了，就是晚上播不方便，人都要睡觉去，所以提前播了。
行，发生啥了？最近
什么都没发生，今天平安无事。
我感觉这不算好事啊，越拖打的越大。
说实话，我觉得这个月应该打不起，应该是打不起，估计要8月份才会有。天太热了，说真的，如果这个时候动手，天真的太热。等一下，我现在正在回边消息，不是回边消息吧？我要去我们之后，我今天那个刚刚我在找资料的时候，刚刚我在那个搜的时候，我其实看到了那个有个视频，我们之后可以看3个小时的采访，我们其实可以看那个。 但是评论区我说实话有点乱七八糟，我先把评论区清一下，我举报一下，也不是举报一下吧，我就没错，我就要举报一下，简直是要侮辱我大脑。就作为一个正儿八经搞翻译的人，我多多少少已经受不了，我觉得评论区真是太侮辱我大脑，我受不了，操！先把野狗们举报一下，我先跟回复一下这位跟他朋友说我翻译，没想到我作为一个翻译过正儿八经翻译过很多作品，我说实话也问大家就可以了。你要什么内容吗？如果说你没有准备什么内容的话，我们可以去看那个访谈，你觉得怎么样？
你看吧，我这边有点事儿，
行吧，那我
就跟他问。
看
那你先看吧，那个我这边先出一点事儿，也不知道你播到几点啊？
不知道，反正不知道，其实可以直播，主要是今天我说一下，以后我们还是尽可能早点播，不要再熬夜了。那个你们可能都知道，有一位 P 十 UP 主，最近应该不是最近吧，他最近公布了他得尿毒症，也就西里斯猫他得了尿毒症了，年纪轻轻的，婚都没结，然后现在得尿毒症了。P 十玩家得尿毒症，其实大家也应该明白是为什么，说白了就是熬夜嘛，然后没有注意。
Talking about a society.
非常可惜啊，主要是他这样的话，大家能帮一下还是帮一下。虽然我不应该说这个事儿，就是大伙也可以去鼓励一下他，因为他这个情况确实难，年纪轻轻的得了尿毒症，所以我们说我们还是能不熬夜就不熬夜了。我也要从我做起，应该说我感觉我熬夜已经半年，我最近半年基本上我最近半年应该只有就是少数几件是转中之前睡觉的，我基本上天天熬。西里斯猫老哥他得尿毒症了，大家也可以去支持一下。主要是他得尿毒症，说白了，他得尿毒症之后呢，说白了，最大的问题是一个是工作不好找，生活也有很大的问题，现在每天都要去，因为这个症实际上治不好嘛，必须每天去洗。只有2个版本啊，我看这个版本。
We're talking about a society.
我们就可以看这个。
We're talking about.
好，再也不熬夜去，尿毒症一直透气，是啊，对吧？一个星期死3次，你说白，你这样弄的话，第一个是公司都不敢录你，这哪天不小心倒岗位上，他还赔钱呢。第二个就是这样之后，他就对吧，整个工作生活都得被打扰。总之就是希望大伙能够好好的，以后多多的这个，还是真的不熬夜。然后如果说就是我自己是在吃各种药的，大家还是吃吧这护肝的药，不要买保健品的，就是什么秋水仙。秋水仙是有毒的，就是什么素能够护肝的，还有降尿酸的。对，这个病真的是非常。
问一下马克，你吃的是他汀类药物？
什么叫他汀类啊？
你吃的是他汀吗？
看有，我那个降血压吃的是2甲双胍，降血糖吃的是2甲双胍，然后降尿酸吃的是看什么药？我降尿酸吃的是菲布斯他。
菲布斯他，那对的。
菲布斯他有个问题，菲布斯他会增加你的那个肾的负担，所以我得加上你肾和肝的负担，所以这是一种护肝的药。这药是什么素叫吧？什么水素？我老是继承秋水仙素，但秋水仙素其实是做生物实验的时候会经常用到一种，肯定不是秋水仙。
秋水仙那玩意儿是拿来治痛风的，我操！
那肯定是我记错了。行吧，今天我们就看那个片吧，就看不在那个，我2个群还是分开，我不打算在另外我聊历史，其实我就不再聊历史群发这样直播了，因为我们直接开始看片子，还是黄，抱歉啊，耽搁这么久，因为确实发生了。
About a society that was right in the middle of one of the main corridors of empire building and new religions in the world. This is the most dangerous.
等一下，我是不是忘了那个会议里面？电影走了，那走了，那我们放那个会。
We're talking about a society.
开个1.25倍速。
We're talking about a society that was right in the middle of one of the main corridors of empire building and new religions in the world. This is the most dangerous neighborhood that you can possibly live in.
26 emperors were murdered in a period of 50 years.
Yes, it's tremendous instability.
Almost all
235年，这个是指
in a
那
period
个
of
是
50
所谓
years.
的军事皇帝，就是从235年到284年是戴克里先那个时候。我跟人翻译过那个有个表，是个波兰人做的，当时整个表，这我们再说。
It's tremendous instability.
Almost all of these emperors were generals, and almost all were murdered by their men. So civil war was the norm, hyperinflation, economic crash, plus there's a plague.
Yes.
It's just a lot of chaos.
Here's why I don't think the Eastern Roman Empire is a military dictatorship. Even though, again, the emperors control the armies, and the armies themselves will often have a say in who becomes emperor, like through the civil wars that we mentioned. The reason why I don't think it's a military dictatorship is because they almost never, very, very, very rarely use the army as an instrument of social control. Sometimes these eunuchs are extremely competent like Narcisse Justinian's general, who
纳尔西斯的话，他不是一开始是宦官。其实，就如果说你讲宦官的话，用纳尔西斯的话，其实不是一个特别好的，因为纳尔西斯他是后天变成的宦官，他出了车祸，所以他并就是说，如果你想说就是宦官，他对于他的，你说如果从积极方面评价宦官的话，其实最好是不太适合用纳尔西斯作为案例。因为他并不是那种典型宦官，就是你小时候就被割了，然后送进宫里。他是后天，他是有了妻子和孩子之后，就他纳尔西斯本质上还是一个官僚，他只是因为个人原因所以变成了宦官。然后你看上面写的活着85岁，那也年龄记错了。你这个时候播挺好，其他人都没播。米老头是不是突然偷偷玩黄白空战变成了米老头
defeated the Goths in Italy in this massive battle? Like this guy was
等一下，我现在说话，你们那个声音能听到吗？
a total hard ass. And he's this little old man. He was very old. He was tiny and he was a eunuch. And the Goths laughed at him, but he had the last laugh.
不过其实实际上纳尔西斯是最后查尔丁尼啊，当然我先说一下，我念人名的时候还是按照我的翻译习惯的，跟大家熟悉的或者说字幕上的不一样，大家的理解就好。因为我的话，我有这方面的洁癖或者要求，我对人名的翻译会尽可能贴近它原本的语言，而不是说是按照英语乃至于说是现在汉语的一些通用，那些翻译太离谱。
The following is a conversation with Anthony Caldelis, a historian of the Eastern
卡尔德利斯变成卡尔德卢斯了啊，无所谓了，差不多。还是有稍微有区别的。他是我们先说一下卡尔德利斯教授的背景，因为我认识的有朋友跟他是这样，他是一个希腊裔，然后他爹背景稍微有点复杂，但是他爹应该是当律师，然后后面是开一个厂子做番茄酱，总而言之就是他爹很有钱，所以说才能供卡尔德利斯做研究。然后我之后可以跟大家念一下我跟卡尔德利斯教授的通信，我跟他交流过几次，主要是问他一些问题，反正到时候看不看，他在网上还挺活跃的。
Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire. This is the Lex Friedman podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description, where you can also find links to contact me, ask questions,
这是南亚口音，这南欧口音也太重了点。
give feedback, and so on. And now, dear friends, here's Anthony Caldelis. You've described that the Byzantine Empire is the Roman Empire, that calling it the Byzantine Empire is an invention of historians writing long after the empire has collapsed, that the people of that time considered themselves Romans, and that the so-called Byzantine Empire never actually existed, that it was, in every legal and cultural sense, the Roman Empire, continuing unbroken. So,
这个表就是分为了所谓的王国、共和国、帝国、西部以及东部时期。这个其实是有问题的。首先是所谓的王国时期，不太准确，因为首先他的第一代君主罗慕卢斯，他应该是他目前来看应该可能是个神话人物，在罗马早期的7位国王中，从第4位开始才能够确认是史实人物，像之前人物很有可能就是后世的构建。然后所谓的共和国时代就是509年废除最后一个国王，到这个公元前27年应该是奥古斯都赢得乌大维或者说奥克塔维乌斯赢得内战啊，你们会翻译成乌大维，但是我还是按照罗马奥克塔维乌赢得内战的，这差不多近500年。我们一般会将这段时期称为所谓的，是不是有人来了？是不是谁回来了？郑老师来了。郑老师您在吗？郑老师，
我回去吧。
您是郑老师，您是那个
休息啊。
喂，郑老师，您是那个有事吗？有事的话，我先把您静下麦。郑老师您，哎呦我去，我把郑老师先静。
我这样回去啊，说我啊。
郑老师，要不您先关一下麦吧，您好像有杂音。把郑老师关一下。好，我们接着看。那个你称之为所谓的这个共和国也是不太准确的，这个我不知道卡尔德斯教授之后应该会讲这个问题。就说白了 ，republic 这个问题我们其实之前也讲过，所谓的共和国其实就 republic 这个词，它在古代甚至我们可以说在近代以前它并没有共和国这个含义。很多人就只是单纯的知道它的本意是指公共事务，但是它对于这个词就是它的使用环境是什么，其实一般来说很少人就是这个所谓的帝国时代或者说古帝国时代，就是从公元27年到公元395年，又有一些人会将其分为所谓的元首制和主宰制，也就是普林西和那个多米纳特。那这个做法，这个分法也是一个非常经典的，是后人会当时人肯定是不会这样认为。然后395和476都比较重，然后1453倒是没有什么特别的。
Let's get our terms right in the grand historical context. What is the Byzantine Empire, and why should we just call it the Roman Empire?
So, Lex, the burden of proof is on those who would assert that what we've been calling the Byzantine Empire is something other than
Yeah.
the Roman Empire, because all of our sources are very clear about this. And we've known about this. We've always known about it. It's almost a form of cognitive dissonance, right? It's like when you know something is the case, but you carry on as if it's not. So the Eastern Roman Empire, this is the direct continuation of the ancient Roman Empire in the East, right? Everybody knows the Western Empire fell in the 5th century. And for many conceptions of Western history, that was sufficient. Like that's when we just called it. The Roman Empire fell in the 5th century. And we kind of know that the Eastern half survived, but we don't want to include that in our cultural genealogy. And so we kind of pretend that it became something else. But in fact, it called itself the Roman Empire. Its subjects were Roman citizens. They called themselves Romans all the way down through to the end and beyond. So there are a number of reasons why Western Europeans wanted to think that the Eastern Empire is something different. And those reasons have created these models where they called it Empire of the Greeks for 1,000 years, and they switched to Byzantine Empire for very political reasons. Now that's collapsing.
我说一下，就是这个，你们如果现在会查资料，他们会跟你说拜占庭这个词是16世纪还是17世纪一个德国人发明。但是实际上这个概念并没有走红，在大部分历史上，其实他们绝大部分都是称之为希腊人帝国。之所以后面改用拜占庭，是因为希腊独立了然后希腊独立了之后，再用希腊帝国称呼就容易引发歧义，所以说他们就改成了用拜占庭这个词。
So we're now moving into a phase where we have the long Roman Empire. We recognize that the history of the Roman state, the Roman polity, is something that lasts an extraordinarily long time, very unique almost in history. From
另外说，你看，他谈到了那个所谓的罗马国家或罗马政体，就是 polity 这个词，就是所谓的 politia，也就是另外说，你看，他谈到了那个所谓的罗马国家或罗马政体，就是 polity 这个词，就是所谓的 politia，也就是柏拉图那本那个著名的那个理想国的原文标题。这个话题我们之前也谈论过反正把这个词翻译为理想国也是一个经典的错译所以然后就是你会说理想国这个东西，如果你们去查的话，发现它的翻译不光有理想国，还有所谓的共和国。它为什么会翻译成共和国呢？因为那本书的那个 politia，它对应的那个拉丁语翻译就是 respublica 然后所以说你们可以看到柏拉图理想国有时候也会翻译成共和国，但是无论是理想国还是共和国都是翻译不对的。我这里要嘲笑我真的要用嘲笑这个词我来称呼有一位历史教授，某一位法学教授自言非常喜欢理想国。我的评价是，如果他真的喜欢的话，他就不会用这个词。就这个词在希腊的意思就是邦国政体，但是其实如果说你们当然我也理解这个字幕组，因为毕竟就是怎么说呢，就是字幕组他也不懂这背景，就是这里的 polity 它 polity 或者 polity 它跟那个 republic 一样，就是它都是指国家就这么简单，就是指国家的意思，它并没有一个所谓的或者邦国家或者说邦国，而是没有什么乱七八糟什么共和国呀什么之类的。
Antiquity, the archaic period, down to the 15th century.
I think it would be really nice to actually look just for a brief moment at the grand scale of the full Roman state as it lasted for over 2,200 years.
Yeah.
So its founding 753 BC to, let's say, the fall of Constantinople in 1453 AD. So can we try to give a big picture overview of everything that happened?
Okay, so first we have a period of the kings. This is almost legendary from like the 8th century BC down to around 510 BC. So this is when Rome is ruled by a series of local kings. The kings are expelled, and
这是七位国。
so this is when Rome
这七位国跟我想的不一样。马内拉乌斯、巴黎斯、迪奥莫德斯、奥迪修塞乌斯、涅斯托尔、阿伽门。这什么玩意？这配图配乱七八糟，这配的怎么是希腊神明？当然，这几位神明确实也跟罗马有关系吧？你不说阿伽门。
Rome is ruled by a series of local kings. The kings are expelled, and the republic, or what we call the republic, is instituted. And this is a regime that's governed by mostly an aristocracy, but with cooperation from the people of Rome. In various ways, the arrangements change over the centuries. So that lasts for about 5 centuries. And then we have the end of the republic in the era of Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar, when the civil wars lead to the creation of an imperial.
其实你看
Caesar
如果说你看
and
今
Augustus
天人
Caesar,
做的，
when the civil
就是如果说你们看今天人做的那个罗马帝王列表里面，一般都会直接以奥古斯都为开端。那其实，在罗马人的观念中，就是应该以凯撒为开端。但其实就是对他一般来说，其实就是应该以以凯撒为开端。
civil wars lead to the creation of an imperial monarchy, right, under Augustus. So we date that roughly either 27 BC, something like that. And thereafter, it is an imperial monarchy for the next millennium and a half. Very broadly, we can divide that into 2 phases, one where the center of power is in Rome and one where it's in Constantinople. And we can debate the dates of when that transition takes place. These big transitions usually take place over long periods of time. They're not like very sudden. So that's the big picture. Kings, republic, imperial monarchy.
The Roman Kingdom, the Roman Republic, the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And then the West and East Roman Empire.
Yes.
And then maybe what are the different terms that we could be using for the Byzantine Empire, including Byzantium. Is it also fair to say the late Roman Empire?
So late Roman Empire we use for both East and West, starting around the reign of Diocletian, maybe even a bit earlier, so during the 3rd century AD, and that goes
所
down
谓的晚期罗马帝国，其实不太建议用罗马帝国晚期，而是用晚期罗马帝国，因为它一般特指是古帝国晚时代。就是差不多从戴克里先到西帝国灭亡，差不多200年。
down to maybe the early 7th century. So that period we call late Roman Empire. And if you ask me to define its principal characteristics, it would probably be the tax system and the administration, the bureaucracy of the later Roman Empire is that comes from mostly Diocletian and Constantine's reforms.
And Diocletian was in the 3rd century.
Yes, 284 to
所以它的名字啊，戴克里先这个翻译很明显是纯粹从英文翻译过来，翻译乱七八糟。就是我一般你如果看我一般翻译话，我现在会翻译成狄奥克连颠，因为它这个词其实是就是它是有个城，就是它是意思是这个狄奥克勒斯城或者狄奥克里斯城。如果你说用通用希腊语读或者狄奥克里斯，如果你按照哥本哈根语读就是狄奥克勒斯，反正就是它是从这个城市里，他老家在那里嘛，所以他这个名字实际上就是他老家的名字。
305 AD. Yes, it's a very important reformer.
And we'll talk about it, but let's just do this whirlwind, and hopefully there'll be automagical images somewhere overlaid. But
okay,
so in 753 BC, Rome, a small
这个小城邦是这样，首先我们并不知道它到底是哪一年的小城诞生，这是第一点。第二点就是从目前的考古证据，都不用说现在，从很早以前的考古证据，我们就发现，其实早期罗马城邦的话，它更多受到了伊特鲁里亚文，而不是拉丁文化。所以说，你看很多人他会把罗马跟那个拉丁文化绑定，但其实这个算法是不对的，因为罗马早期甚至它不是跟拉丁文绑定，而是跟伊特鲁里亚文化绑定，而伊特鲁里亚人所说的语言，它甚至都不是印欧语，他说的是另外一门比较独特的语，就是有点就类似于巴斯克人嘛。你看像巴斯克人也是，就是巴斯克人说的语言，它也不是印欧语。
city-state is founded, and in
普罗提亚是不是跟葡萄那个词应该是一个词。
509 BC, the kings are overthrown and the Roman Republic is born. 390 BC, the Gauls sack Rome. And this, I believe, among other events throughout its history, is a formative trauma that hardens Rome's security obsession. It turns out throughout its history, people want to attack from different directions, and so you have to defend. So there's 2 wars, as we're actually saying off mic. There's 2 kinds of military operations. One is wars of conquest and expansion, and one is more defensive. And we'll talk about how the military changes throughout its history to allocate more effort to one versus the other. In 264 to 146 BC, the Punic Wars and the survival against Hannibal transformed Rome into a Mediterranean superpower. Then, like you mentioned, Caesar in 49 to 31 BC, Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon to assassination of Caesar to the Battle of Actium, and then the Civil War dismantles the Republic and concentrates power in a single ruler.
其实电影不在不任何我想跟电影说一下，你看这里就认为那个奥大维、奥克塔维安或者实际上你这里是不是把它称之为奥克塔维安？那我们以后就称它为奥克塔维安吧。那么奥克塔维安就是在今年的概念中，他是罗马的首任皇帝，但实际上如果说你看这个罗马人，就是我刚刚说，如果你看罗马人自己的叙事的话，他们很明显认为凯撒是好，我们接着看。
Octavian, aka Augustus, the first Roman emperor, let's say.
Yeah.
Then 27 BC, Augustus founds the Principate, really low-key monarchy. And so officially that ends the Republic, and then that begins 27 BC to 180 AD, the Pax Romana, which is a period of relative peace and stability. And a lot of the emperors we know of, the sexy popular emperors, come from that period.
Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius, who I'm a big fan of from that period. Then that takes us to 284 AD, the guy we mentioned, Diocletian, who rebuilds the state. Emperors drop the first citizen mask, this perception of the way.
这个说法有问题啊，这个所谓的摘第一公民，这个我说实话，这个东西很大程度上是后世的一种构建，因为其实我们真的从罗马人的角度来看的话，你会发现就是奥克塔维安跟那个狄奥克连丁的宫廷没有什么本质的不同，因为你们如果真的是仔细去看奥古斯，就是我们扣除奥古斯都去施政的话，发现奥古斯都在他的行政权中是大量的用了他个人的奴隶啊、奴仆或者说朋友。其实如果说你要说从正式化程度上说，你不好说因为两个人就是因为你说狄奥克连颠说什么是强调自己是君主吧，那奥克塔维安他一样用了大量的什么奴隶啊、仆人啊、朋友啊之类的，就他们的宫廷在实际上并没有本质。我们更多会强调狄奥克连颠是他在，其实我们现在会强调，其实我们现在之所以会这么如此的看狄奥克连颠，是因为他统治的20年是相对来说是比较平稳的20年，相比于之前和之后，就是说白了就是其实改革也不是说是一朝一夕完成，也是经历了一个漫长的时间。但是因为说 第二库列颠在未来大量时间，所以说很多改革，如果说我们要给它找一个比较稳定的追溯的话，我们就不得不去找它。
We'll talk about this, the persona that's presented by the state. 312 AD, Constantine defeats Maxentius at the Milvia Bridge to become the sole ruler of the western half of the empire, and then founds Constantinople in 330 AD. East and west are split in 395 AD. Visigoths sack Rome in 410 AD. The west falls at 476 AD as the last Western emperor is deposed. And then we sort of focus more on the East Roman Empire with 527 in the 6th century, Justinian's reign. In the 7th century, Heraclius defeats Persia and then loses against the Arabs. There's the Arab conquest continuing in the 7th century. In the 8th, the Arab siege of Constantinople fails. There's the Macedonian dynasty that you have an excellent book about, and then the Crusades, and then eventually leading to Constantinople falling in 1453 AD. As a person who understands the full journey of it, with a focus on East Roman history, is there obvious glaring holes or incorrect things in what I just said?
No, nothing incorrect. I would say if you wanted to produce a sort of very swift timeline of its history, it's obviously important to focus on the moments when lots of territory was lost to foreign invaders. And these are actually three main moments. There's the Arab conquests in the 630s. This is a decade. In a decade, that war was lost. It is the Seljuk Turk conquest of Asia Minor, modern Turkey, in the 1070s. And that was very swift and partly reversed afterwards, but only partly. And then there's the Fourth Crusade, 1204, when the armies...
1204年基本上是1204年的第四次行军东征，基本上可以说是，实际上就是彻底的把罗马的政权给击垮。就是你会发现在过去2000多年的时间当中，这还是第一次罗马政权被打得如此彻底。因为这一次是中央政府连带就中央政府直接被整个的端掉了，这个在历史上是从未发生，就中央政府被外敌干掉。这个在罗马历史上是，就哪怕是高卢人那次突袭都没有造成这么大的损失。
From mostly France, sack, conquer Constantinople, and dismember the empire as much as they could. It didn't last that long. The Romans managed to regroup and recover. But those are the three main crisis points. They are very swift, but they cause incredible damage. For all the rest of its history, it is a state and society that is generally sort of consolidating, regrouping, and generally engaged in slow but steady economic growth, territorial expansion, a small scale but steady. So we can talk about this. I think it's an important thing to keep in mind about the big picture, that the defeats were swift and kind of, terrible. But the most of its history is one of slow growth. There's
也很难说，一般来说是一大败之后，然后缓慢的恢复，然后再是下一场大败，那很难有什么特别重大
some
的
traumatic events that have a big impact, but a lot of the developments we'll talk about, it might seem or feel like there's a particular moment when those developments or changes in the way the government or the military is structured arise, but really it's a gradual process. And
Exactly.
So that's the tension we have to be constantly dancing with.
Yeah, so as historians, this is a point of method, and it's very important. There are moments when, so as historians,
你注意到他这里用
this
方
is
法
a point
论
of method.
就是这个就是他就是卡尔德雷斯的他的一些用词跟他的家庭背景，但是这涉及到私人问题，我也不方便公开说。
And it's very important. There are moments when, like, individuals with a great deal of power make choices that impact everybody else and have, long-term consequences downstream. Constantine's conversion to Christianity, for example, right? Not something that anybody could have or did predict. Okay. Otherwise, most of the developments that we identify by specific dates, like you mentioned 395, the division of the Eastern and the Western empires, those are conventional dates that we use to actually capture what is in fact a much longer process. There was no split between the two halves. It was one among many allocations of jurisdiction to like one son and another son in the East and the West. The two halves were subsequently reunited. Then they kind of divided again among different emperors. It's just a process. And so we sometimes use fixed dates for what is in fact a process. Or for 76, the fall of the Western Empire, that's just the last date. It's actually a very long process that took decades. Right? So that's just something to keep in mind, that sometimes we're
主
talking
要是395年之后，西部的就罗马人在西部的政权开始逐步的被蛮族所瓦解，这个就是核心不在于东西之间出现这种矛盾，而是西部的政权在瓦解。
about processes. Sometimes we're talking about very discrete events with long-term consequences. Yeah.
Maybe an impossible question for a Roman state that lasted over 2,200 years, but is there a kind of through line, a thread, a soul that runs through the entire history of the Roman Empire? As you said, it's a slow transformation and evolution. But if we dare call the whole thing Rome, the Roman state,
Yes.
is there some aspects, some characteristics that run through the whole thing.
I think so, yes. By the way, you know the metaphor of the ship of Theseus? Okay, so in case the audience doesn't know it, this is when there's a ship and it's at sea, and over time, like every component of that ship is replaced with some other component, so that by the end of the story, it has none of the original parts, but it's like in a certain sense still that ship because of the story, right? Okay, so Roman history is different from, let's say, Greek history or Christian history, right? Christian history is the story of a religion. It can be in any country, among any ethnic group. It's here, there, right? It's everywhere. But you still have histories of Christianity. It's the same with like, say, Greek culture or your Greek literature, right? It's not a function of a particular state. Ancient Greeks were famously never united in a state, but it's people who culturally accept that tradition as their kind of elite prestige culture and engage with Homer and Plato and so forth. And they can be anywhere. Roman history is not like that. Roman history is very specifically the history of a state or a political community. And so this is the community of the Roman people, the Roman citizens, and it is in gradual evolution, but at no point is there a rupture in that history.
说白了就是由罗马人所组成
然
的一个郑氏。
后就说
怎么郑老师你要说什么？我说吧。说白了就是罗马的核心就是罗马人所组成政体，就是一直是它的它整个在这段2000年历史中的一个核心位置。
Such that its members would ever think that something dramatic had changed and that they're no longer part of that story. So in the same way as the ship I just mentioned, in other words, it's the narrative that you tell about it where the changes that take place to it make sense only when you see them within the context of that story. It's the same with Roman history. Yes, there are changes. Like eventually everything changes, but it happens so gradually that it doesn't seem that way to anyone living in it. And so the narrative of the history of the Roman people is what holds all of this together.
How important is it that
其实他这里还稍微没有继续谈，他之后可能之后要谈，因为这个时候还没有开始。
in Greek culture? So a lot of my friends who are Greek are extremely proud of being Greek. There's certain cultures that are proud.
Sure.
And it's not a momentary, ephemeral thing. It feels like a thing that has lasted for many generations.
Oh, yeah.
And so that is an engine that propagates through time that carries that culture forward. And so does a similar thing apply for the Roman Empire in a different way? Maybe because you say it's a political kind of community. That means a set of ideals. And we'll talk about because those ideals become even more concretized and explicit, I think, through the East Roman Empire. Because one of the things you talk about is that the citizens of the empire are kind of all connected, that they are engaged in this whole sort of machinery. Anyway, that's a complicated way of asking. Is there some elements that Greek pride that I speak? Is there some kind of Roman pride that propagates?
应该说，今天的希腊的民族认同中有一部分，它的内容其实是来自于罗马的字号。
The thing?
Oh, there totally is. You can find authors and historical agents who definitely display this or talk about it. But we don't want to make that the center of the story or the basis for any analysis because so what you're observing in your Greek friends is also the result of modern nation building, it's the result of modern systems of education and sort of national identities. And these are fostered and created through all kinds of media and institutions. It's just a different situation altogether. What you find in ancient republics.
就是 ancient 就是古代共和国，其实就是这个翻译还是个问题，其实还是没走，就这里的应该就翻译成古代国家，对，但是哎呀，就是这个问题，这应该不是古代共和国，我知道他可能想说是罗马国家，但是说白了还是那个话 republica 这个词在古代没有共和国意思。
Republics or medieval states is more something like a consensus to be ruled, to rule and to be ruled in this particular political community. Now, some members of it may definitely, and in fact did have this kind of pride. I'll give you an example. So there's an ambassador in the 6th century, and he's concluding a deal with the Persians. And, the Persians are skeptical because the Romans can't always be trusted. But this guy says to them, he says, and let me just tell you, you're making a deal here with the Romans. The Romans, the name should say it all. Like, and you get a sense that this is expressing a certain pride in like being a bearer of the Roman tradition and speaking for the emperors and the Roman Empire. I mean, that for him, this was something very, very momentous. You find these kinds of examples. So these people exist, but I wouldn't want to make that the basis for like an analysis of how the society works as a whole.
Yeah.
For the most part, it was something like a consensus where subjects or citizens, however you want to call them, they agree to let's say be taxed and be ruled by political authorities because of what they get in return. And there's this kind of understanding of a mutual set of responsibilities. And my concern, among other things, is to try to explain how this society held together for so long. Pride, yes, among some people, definitely. You find it in the sources, but sources are texts are written by literate, usually elites. So this is a small part of the population. We can't automatically extend their attitudes to everybody else. So in dealing with everyone else, we have to work with different kinds of materials, different kinds of assumptions. We can't just posit that they're just proud of being Roman. They could have been. We don't know that, though. We can see other sorts of things about them. Like, for example, did they pay their taxes? Did they try to rebel and leave the empire? So those are the kinds of things that I look for.
Pride is one component, but there could be other explanations and factors that
经典
explain
无糖可
what
乐。
motivates us.
哎，你无糖可乐怎么没有？我靠，这主持人无糖可乐，他居然不盖瓶，那不气不全跑了？我操！
Soldiers to defend the capital, for example.
Yeah.
Like what motivates a particular person to pay the taxes, and then this is something that we'll definitely talk about. But just to linger at the big picture, if the Romans from the different periods met, how different would they be from each other? Like if I brought to you, this is one of those, there's like
Yes.
a blind taste test you can do with food.
Yes.
Pepsi
and Coke.
Pepsi and Coke.
Yes.
If I brought you a Roman from the kingdom period, the republic period, the early imperial period.
I mean, I get asked this in a much more radical form, which is like if you take someone from like around 1453 who's a Roman and a subject of this Roman and compare him or have him meet, in your imagination with someone from the ancient republic, like how could they find any kind of agreement on what it means to be Roman and recognize each other as belonging to that polity? This is a very difficult thing to. Now, I can point to a number of things that they would find eventually, and if you told them, you're both Romans, you're both from this long history, now you have to find what you have in common. I think they could find things, but before we talk about those, if you want to get into it, let's just say that the question can even be posed about Romans who live at the same time. I mean, if you take a senator from the age of Cicero and someone from the slums of Rome, who's maybe the son of a slave who was brought from the East by some general a generation ago, and put them in a room and say, now you discuss, you're both Romans, what do you have in common? They might have trouble in coming up with something, right? So let's not minimize the sheer diversity of experiences and sort of life experiences of Romans who are living at the same time. The important thing is that change is always happening. And from my standpoint, this change is cumulative, so it results in a Greek-speaking Orthodox Christian Romans in Constantinople who at first sight might have little to do with Latin-speaking, non-Christians or worshiping the ancient gods, Romans from a republic in Rome. And those are very, very different situations. And no doubt they would look and seem foreign to each other, right? The question is, why do we assume that someone like Hadrian, right, an emperor from the 2nd century, sort of a very cosmopolitan figure who travels around the empire with his Greek lover and, writes poems and has a Greek beard and loves Greek culture and has much to do with someone from the Middle Republic who's some warrior who's chasing down cattle from the Samnites. And yet the way we understand history is that those belong together, Hadrian and this ancient Roman from the 4th century BC, but not Hadrian and someone an emperor a few centuries later who's just like him, bilingual in Greek and Latin, who's kind of cosmopolitan, who reads the same stuff, because we posit this rupture between Roman and Byzantine.
One of the ways we can try to analyze this is, for example, looking at a very specific role in society across time. So we can look at soldiers, how they saw violence, for example. That's one way.
Yeah.
So you're making me realize that we can just take 1,000 different professions and positions in society and really specifically look at what the experience of the world was like.
Yeah.
And so one of them is the view on violence across time. And then the other is the view on the role of the government across time.
That's an excellent way of putting it. So take soldiers, for example, they swear an oath, right? Now, we don't have the oath for every given period. We have some approximations of it, some hints of what it contained, but we know that Roman soldiers swore an oath, like throughout all of the centuries of the empire. Sometimes they might add like a Christian formula to it, sometimes before that not, but they swore basically to protect the republic, or depending on what term they used, or the empire or the emperor. And this is something that they would have recognized very quickly. Like if they met each other over time and said, hey, what was your oath like? And they recited it, this would have made much sense to them, right? Or take, for example, a woman who runs a business, right? From any century of the empire, it would have been, especially the later you go, the more so, that this woman is enabled to do this by virtue of Roman law, of certain, Roman law of property and inheritance and marriage, but also regulations regarding who can do what and what kinds of properties women can handle and under what circumstances. This is something that Roman women had in common that many other cultures did not. So
其实这个更多是罗马人关于对于后代定义，女性后代的话，一般来说也会被视为一个。当然，说实话，我们还知道在古代的话，你还是非常难够还是得说白了就是把家产传给女儿，本身还是传给外孙。
I'll give you an example. So, for example, in the 10th, 11th century, there are Jewish women who live in the Eastern Roman Empire, who realized that they have more rights in Roman
对，
courts.
这是个典型，这是很典型的案例。是这个卡尔德在那个罗马之影谈到过，就是有犹太人的妇女会主动找罗马人的法庭，而不去找拉比。
Than in rabbinical ones. And they take their disputes to the Roman courts. Now, the thing is that for the Romans, these are property matters, not religious matters. But for the rabbis, these are religious matters. But the Roman courts trump the Jewish courts in the empire, right? And so you end up with a situation where Jewish women have more rights than Jewish women do elsewhere because Roman law is not operative. And there you go. Like these things matter, right? And that's a function of imperial law.
And this would be an interesting actually interplay between the law and religious institutions throughout the East Roman Empire. So you argue that even though the personality of the various emperors varied, as we'll talk about, and as they're often venerated, celebrated, criticized, talked about, the late Roman Empire was projecting a persona to its citizens that was consistent throughout its history. Can you describe what you mean by this and describe the different detailed characteristics of this persona?
Yes. So this persona, it's what the government or the emperor, the court, and the spokesman, the bureaucracy want their subjects to think this whole thing is about. Like, how is power being used? Why and for whom, right? And they do so in laws that they promulgate throughout the empire. Sometimes they have these laws read in church, for example, or posted publicly. They're definitely eager to have them communicated to as many people as possible. But they're also a function of imperial rhetoric. So the way you praise an emperor, the way you talk about an emperor, you find this language in petitions. So this is a hugely important glue for this society, is that anyone could basically petition the authorities for, let's just say, just about anything. That's not technically true, but there's a lot of petitioning going on. So, if you think something's wrong or you've been...
他怎么给我警告了？我操！哎，刚刚是不是给我警告了？我看。等一下，我看刚刚是不是给我警告了？哦操！给我警告干嘛？有病呢！哦，等，我看警告在哪看呢？等一下，网页管理情愿，我刚刚怎么给我举报？刚给我警告了，你怎么看呢？我操！说我挂机在哪儿啊？那我们要不要看？我操！他妈给我举报，他妈谁受得了？我操！没办法，我服了，我们要不要接着看？郑老师，您现在在吗？郑老师？
等等，
都是我挂机了，我去！
我去！
对呀，有毛病啊！
我先说一下，就是我大概8点时候我会去旁听一堂阿拉伯语入门课，虽然那个我阿拉伯语学得很糟啊，我会旁听个入门课，所以说会暂时退出来，转到另外一个直播间里去。
是没事，郑老师，我们差不多是不是我数的可能？我们可能8点钟结束啊，8点钟归月那边要播，我们这边就不播。
好，那我到时候我就会去旁听一堂阿拉伯语课程。
算了，今天直播到这就结束了，反正今天也没人来，今天要不然或者我们现在下播2个小时，10点钟再来也可以。
OK，
那我们现在先下了，等完10点钟再来吧。
好，
我们暂时先下了，我们今天10点钟，也可能不来，也可能今天就这样了，今天也没什么话题，我们的话题昨天差不多就聊完了，所以说今天先到这，先下，大伙再见。正好我也要去翻译，今天到这，今天到我就这样吧，那再见，拜拜。